Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, where today we are going to talk about the concept of data warehousing. Now, we will try to understand and the look at what exactly are data warehouses and how do these data warehouses work. Okay, that is what our target is for today's session. To introduce you all to the concept of the technologies which are involved as part of data warehousing, so that we can understand a little bit more about some of the most utilized technology in terms of our productionization of different applications. So, as part of this session, you will be learning about what exactly are data warehouses. That is the first thing, right? You will be learning about the importance of data warehouses. You will be looking at some of the types of data warehouses which are available to us. We will be looking at the architectures of data warehouse, and we will also be looking at challenges which are involved in data warehousing. Okay, so let's first understand what exactly is a data warehouse. What do we mean when we talk about this specific term? So now this is essentially the process of constructing and using a data warehouse. So this brings us to the question, what is a data warehouse? Okay, so if you want to look at a very simple definition, okay, a data warehouse is constructed from multiple heterogeneous sources. So that means that whatever data that we are taking that data from multiple sources, from different platforms across our entire data architecture. We're not just reliant on a single data source. We are, as a matter of fact, looking at multiple platforms. Okay. This will support analytics. Okay. So it will also look at structured and or ad hoc queries. And we're also going to look at data consolidation because you're taking the data from multiple sources, right? So when you take the data from multiple sources, it is always going to be difficult for us to evaluate and understand how the data is going to work. Okay, all right. So this is what our data warehouse and data warehousing is. Now let's look at a bit more detail on the data warehouses. Now, if you look back at our definition, we talked about heterogeneous data sources. What are these heterogeneous data sources? Right. This is our data source. Okay. So you're not just looking at a single kind of data. I'm not just looking at, let's say, a CSV files or Excel files. Those are just not my only options. I'm looking at more than that. Okay. A very simple example is here in front of you. We have some operational databases. Okay. So we have databases. Okay. So you could have SQL database. You could have NoSQL database. Okay. And then you have files. These files can be XML, JSON. You're looking at PDFs, right? So you're looking at multiple sources of data coming into the picture. More than one source of data coming into the picture. Okay. Now, how is this going to actually work? Okay. How exactly am I going to make this work? We have something known as the staging area. Okay. Now, the staging area is a very common terminology. Okay. When it comes to understanding of what is a staging area, you can think of the staging area as like a starting point. Okay. Now, most of the time, you will hear this terminology, staging area, as part of things like military or law enforcement operations. They will define a point that is going to be known as a staging area. Okay. Now let's say that there is some kind of operation that needs to be conducted by the police. Okay. So what you'll have here is here in this, you will have obviously multiple units within the same precinct. You will have multiple units, right? Each of them working on a different part of law enforcement, right? So what will happen is they will all gather in a single place before they are segregated and before they get any kind of specific tasks. So the staging area is what you might say a point on the data pipeline where the entire data is gathered together for the first time. Okay. So that is our staging area. Now, after the staging area is where we will have a data warehouse coming to the picture. Okay. Now here we have something very important. Obviously raw here refers to the raw data. Okay. We have something called meta here. Now, what is this meta that we are looking at? When we talk about meta, we are specifically talking about metadata. Now, excuse me, metadata is simply defined as data about the data. If you want to get an idea on the infrastructure of any kind of data, okay, you're going to use your metadata. Okay. So the metadata will help you in understanding the details on your data. Okay. So any kind of data which you are going to use to represent another data is known as metadata. So, for example, I have a tabular data here, right? And my data contains some columns, right? So we have some columns here, right? And then we have some rows. Now imagine randomly you're looking at a data. Okay. Now here you will have to try and understand what this data is, which is always a very difficult activity. It can be challenging. Okay. So what if I give you a data dictionary? Suddenly, your understanding of the data is going to improve a lot. Okay. This is what we call as our data metadata. Okay. So metadata will act as a roadmap to the data. The metadata within our actual data, within the data warehouse, sorry, is going to define the data warehouse object. It's going to act as a directory. Okay. And this directory is going to act like a pointer. Okay. So basically, it's going to point in the direction that we want our data to look at. Okay. Whatever that direction may be. Okay. So that is the importance of metadata. Okay. Metadata is going to contain multiple parts. What is it going to contain? It is going to contain things like, let's remove this and get some space to understand a few things. So we have something known as business metadata. This is going to contain the information on the ownership of the data. Okay. Whatever is the ownership of that data, will be present over here. Okay. Then we will have something known as operational metadata. Okay. Now, what do I mean by operational metadata? Operational metadata is a scenario where we will have the currency of the data as well as we will also have the data lineage. Okay. Now, what do you mean by the currency of the data? You're saying that it's going to contain the currency, but what is currency? What is the meaning of this term currency? What does it actually include? What does it actually do? So, data currency is going to determine whether the data that we have, it is active. That means it is actively being used, or is it inactive? And inactive can mean archived. So basically, we are going to archive our data. Okay. Or is the data purged? Purged means the data is removed. Okay. Or in the process of being removed because we no longer have any requirement for it. Okay. This is what our data currency will tell you. Okay. Now, what is data lineage? Now, what is the meaning of the term lineage? When we talk about lineage, what we are talking about is we are talking about a line that is going to define some kind of history of whatever information it is that you're looking at. Okay. So, for example, if you have your family history, right? Who was your parents? Who were your grandparents, great grandparents, so on and so forth. That is your family lineage. Okay. So, when we talk about the lineage of our data, we are looking at what kind of history we have for the data that is migrated. Okay. And what are the transformations that we are going to apply on that data? Okay. Then we have data for mapping. Okay. Now, what is the data for mapping? We are looking at different kind of data sources. I've given you some examples here. We are looking at CSV files. We are looking at SQL, NoSQL databases. We are looking at XML, JSON. You could have different kinds of data sources. Okay. So, what exactly are we trying to understand here? Okay. What is the goal of our understanding here? Okay. All of these different data sources, we are trying to store them in a common place. Okay. This common place is a data warehouse. Okay. So when we talk about mapping, we are looking at the source databases and what kind of content do our source database have. What are we doing for data extraction? Okay. What are we doing for data partition? What are we doing for data cleaning? What are the different transformation rules that we are going to apply to it? What is data refresh and purge? Okay, how do we purge our data? And what are the ways in which we can refresh our data? Then finally, we have summarization. So in summarization, we are going to look at dimension algorithms. We will look at data on granularity, aggregation, summarization, etc. So this is what happens in our data warehouses. Now we have another component of data, this architecture, which is known as data maps. So let's briefly discuss on what exactly are data maps. Okay. So essentially, we have, let's say, for an organization, we have collected their data in a data warehouse, which we will eventually use for analysis. Now, as part of this organization, what we understand is we are not always going to have one party of interest. For example, after collecting our data, we want relevant data to be shared to relevant people. Okay. So we will use something known as a data model. Okay. Now, what is a data model? It is going to contain a subset of the organization-wide data set. So you're looking at the entire organization. Okay. And the data mart is going to contain information which is valuable to a specific group of people in the organization. For example, we have a supply chain management company. Okay. So they are looking at sales data, they are looking at inventory data, and they are looking at purchasing data. Now, as such, we have three separate teams. We have a team which is handling data mining, we have data reporting, and we have data analytics. Okay. We are calling them the client. Okay. Because the client is anybody who is using our data. They may not be from an external data source. Okay. Not always. So the data mining company is interested in sales and inventory, but they are not interested in purchasing. So there is no point in giving them access to the purchasing dataset. Whereas the analytics team is interested in inventory and purchase. So there is no point in giving them access to the sales data. Okay. So this kind of segregation is what we get in a data warehouse. Okay. Now, if you were to access all of this data individually, it would be an extremely time consuming step. Okay. And you will have to spend a lot of time just gathering data. Okay. But now because of this advent of data warehousing, we are able to do it a lot sooner. Okay. Data warehousing, this is the benefit. The key components of a data warehouse are the database itself. What are the ETL tools which we are using? ETL is extract, transform, and load. Okay. Then, what are the reporting tools that we are using? Okay, what kind of reporting mechanism is in place? This is how our data warehouses are going to work. Now, the next thing that we will look at is the importance of our data warehouse. Okay, so let's understand that data warehouses will help us in informed decision making. Now, why do we want to do informed decision making? Because decisions play a major role in our understanding of the data. Okay. Without proper collection and gathering and transformation of the data, okay, you cannot make any decision. Now, there are a lot of benefits of using data warehouse. For example, data warehousing is going to allow you to integrate with the BI tools. So you have a lot of business intelligent tools which you can use, right? We're talking about tools like Power BI, you're looking at Excel, you're looking at Tableau, right? This is what our data warehousing is. Okay. So we will be able to integrate our data from the data warehouse to the business intelligence tools. Okay. And if we are talking about real-time processing of the data, in terms of real-time processing, we will have something called as big data. Big data is essentially any data which you cannot represent as part of our regular offline or on-premise processing. Okay. Instead, what we need to look at is specific tools which are designed to handle such large data sets. We are talking about Apache, Hadoop, or Spark, right? These are specific tools which are designed for data warehousing. Okay. So you will have the ability to integrate your big data tools with the data warehouse tools. Okay. So this is the importance of data warehouse. Now, we have different types of data warehouses. Okay. And we will try to understand a few of them. Okay. Specifically, we are going to try and focus on our enterprise data warehouse. Okay. So we can divide our data warehousing into three parts. We have enterprise data warehousing. We have operational data storage, and we have data. Okay. Now we have already looked at the data. What is a data mart? It is a subset of the data. So essentially, it is a subset of the data warehouse, where you will just divide the data for specific teams. Okay. Then we have enterprise data warehouse. Okay. When we talk about enterprise data warehouses, we are talking about centralized warehouses, which will provide us with decision support services across an enterprise. Okay. So when we specifically look at enterprise data warehouses, we are looking at a data warehouse which will contain a company's business data, including customer information. Okay. So a enterprise data warehouse, or some people might call it EDW, will enable data analytics. And these data analytics will provide you with actionable insights. Okay. And like pretty much all kinds of your data warehouses, okay, it's going to act as a repository for most or all of organizational data to facilitate broad access and analysis. Okay. So now, what are the key components of our enterprise data warehouse? The key components are pretty much the same as you have in your regular data warehouses. Okay. So you are looking at the data sources. So this is going to encompass different kinds of data sources, which will include your spreadsheets, some SaaS applications, relational databases. We're also looking at enterprise resource planning or ERP systems, right? We are looking at CRM systems, which are our customer relationship management. We are looking at finance applications. We are looking at IoT devices, mobile phones, and any other kind of system which the business can use to collect the data. Okay. So this is our data sources. Then we will also have the staging area. Okay. The staging area, as we have discussed, is basically a point of the data warehouse where all of the data from different sources is gathered together. Okay. So this is where your data is integrated, cleaned, and prepared before it is loaded into any kind of enterprise data warehouses. Okay. The enterprise data warehouse is going to ensure that by utilizing our staging area, we can store the data in a consistent and usable format. And it is always ready for further processing or analysis. Okay. So now, what are some of the benefits that we get from our enterprise data warehouses? You will get real-time access to the data for action. So these EDWs or enterprise data warehouses, they will make your data viewable and actionable in real time. And they will perform ELT is extract load transform approach over the common ETL paradigm. Okay. So within ELT approach, what is the difference between the ELT approach and the ETL approach? In the ELT approach, we are going to extract and load the data. Okay. Without doing any kind of transformation. Now, when we don't do this transformation, it just makes it easier for us to access our data for analysis. Okay. You also get a holistic understanding of the customer. So you get a complete view of a customer's business, which will help you improve campaign performance, minimize churn, and until and at the end of the day, you will have to grow your business revenues. Okay. So you will also be able to do predictive analytics, which the teams can then use for scenario modeling or data-driven forecasting to inform business and marketing decisions. Then you can also ensure data compliance, and you can keep a track of whether your data is, meeting certain requirements. We can audit and vet the data sources very quickly. You can also do compliance with various different privacy law, such as GDPR in Europe. Okay. Then we are looking at empowering users who have limited technical knowledge. So an EDW will benefit non-technical employees in job functions beyond your regular marketing, finance, and supply chain. For example, Let's say that you have a store, right? Or you want to build a store. Now, you want the store to have optimized customer experience. Okay. So you can look at IoT devices which are already present in existing locations and try to see which part is having the most or the least engagement from the end user. Okay. You can also obviously the benefit of data warehouse, which is standard across the board, is a consolidation of data into a single reliable repository. So what we will do now is we will explore one of the open source platforms which are available to us for data warehouse. Okay. So now let me show you the tool that we will be looking at. The tool that we are looking at is known as ClickHouse. Okay. ClickHouse basically acts as a column-oriented database management system. Okay. So this is a real-time data warehouse. And the benefit of ClickHouse is that we have an open source version, which we can use to get started. Okay. So we have a quick start operation. Okay. You can see you can connect to different CLIs, you can connect to different languages, you can migrate from different sources. Okay. So we have the installation guide. Okay. So now let's say try it out. Okay. So we will first start by upgrading our system. So sudo apt upgrade, and it will upgrade our data. Okay, so this is done. Now we have to install a few dependencies. Okay, so we will say sudo apt install apt transport https. We will install CA certificates, and we will also install one more dependency, which is known as directory manager. Okay. So if it is already installed, you will get this message, and if it is not installed, then you will be able to install it using this command. Now, after that, we have to get our ClickHouse repository. Okay. So let me find that repository for us. Source. So we need to understand the installation process here. Okay. We will first add the apt repository here. Okay. So we'll add the apt repository. Okay. So we'll wait for it to get added. Okay. And then we will add the APT. Okay. And then what I need to do here is I need to do an update again. Update my repository. Okay. Then we will say sudo apt install click house server. And we will also install something known as ClickHouse client. Okay. And this will install that system for us. Then we will use our system CTL to start the server. Okay. You can use the status to check whether the service is running or not. If it is not running, in case it says here inactive or dead, something like that, you can say sudo system CTL enable ClickHouse server. This will enable the service for you, and then you can get it started. Okay. So then let's say I do ClickHouse client. Okay. So here, when I'm running this, I'm getting the error. Okay. So what I need to do is I need to say hyphen hyphen password and then type my password. And that will give me the access. Okay. So this is how we can install ClickHouse for us. It's as simple as that. We do not have to do anything complicated. And if you come over here and look at the documentation, okay, you can install in different platforms. For example, this is for Linux, Mac OS, and free BSD. Okay. Then this is for production deployment. Okay. Similar to what we have done. Okay. Then you can also install it as a standalone. Okay. And we can install the server and the client. Okay. So this is our ClickHouse. Okay. Now, here, if I say, let's say, select one, I will get one as the output alongside a query ID. Now, ClickHouse is a data warehouse querying tool. Okay, so essentially it allows you to access the data which is available within our data warehouses. Okay, and write queries to execute different kinds of requirements that you might have for your business. Okay, so we are going to look at create database, which is very, very similar to SQL. Okay, and just for the sake of following the syntax, we will write create database. If not exists, so we are checking whether this database is present or not. Okay, you can use the exact same query when you are looking at some tool like MySQL. Okay, so here I will create a sample DB. Okay, and done. It is created for us. Then what I'll say is I want to use this database. So I'll say use underscore sample DB. Again, quite similar to what actual SQL queries. As of now, we have not yet done anything which is too complicated. We just followed the simple steps which are already in place. So then let's create a table. Okay. And let's call this table as visits. And here, now we are getting a syntax error. What does this imply? It means that we cannot just keep moving on to the next line. Okay. Now this is the drawback of using what is essentially a command line tool. Okay. We are basically using the free version of this tool. Okay. As we saw when we logged in, looked at the website, we have a cloud trial and we have the open source. Okay. So here, what I will do is I will say create table visits, and then I will start adding my details. ID, U, int 32, unique int 32. URL is string. Then we have visit date, which is as date, and visitor ID, which is as uint 32 again. And that is my table created. Now, in ClickHouse, we will have something known as engines. Now, what is the meaning of this engine? These engines will essentially allow us to run the read and write operations which are available in our databases. Okay, and different kinds of engines will determine the overall performance that you get from your database. Okay, so we are going to add an engine here. Okay, and the engine that we are going to use is known as merge tree, which is one of the most commonly used engines in our ClickHouse databases. Okay. Now, if you want, you can obviously look at the tutorial. Okay. And you will understand the different kinds of values which are available to us. Okay, so we will define our engine as merge tree, and then I will partition the data. Okay, I want to partition the data to my visit date column. So we'll use the visit date as a partition. Then we will order the data by taking a look at our visit date and ID. And then using something known as settings, we will set the index granularity. So from get-go, we are setting our granularity as 8192, and that is our value. Okay, so I made a small mistake here. This should be small. So visit date like this, and it's done. Okay, so I can simply write select star from visits, and the query is running, but there is nothing to select as such. Okay, so we will start inserting some values into the database here. So we will insert into the database. I'll mention the column names. You can see so far, whatever values or whatever things we are following, they are all equivalent to what you have as part of your SQL. Okay. As such, there is no difference. Okay. So we'll get some values added into this. Okay. Right. Then again, we will run our select query. Select star from visits, and we will get the output. Okay. So you're able to use a data warehouse too, as long as you know how SQL is going to work. Okay. Then one final thing that I would like to talk about today is select star from something called as system.matrix. Okay. So here, it will give you the different matrix which are being used as part of our data warehouse. How many number of queries are executing? How many merge operations are happening in the backend? What kind of mutation, etc. All of those things are there, right? And these things are all taken into account when it comes to our data. Okay. So you can evaluate your system and make sure that everything is working as expected. Okay. So this is what our data warehouses are. And this is how you can utilize data warehouses. Today we saw a very small example of looking at something known as a ClickHouse. Okay. So Thank you so much for everyone who was tuned in today. I hope you had a good time learning about data warehouses. Okay. And we will see you for the next webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.